intern at, sorry about that.
No,
Hello,
that's my
my
fault.
name is Donald Lang. I am an intern at the Pittsburgh Portable Hume Center to be a peer support specialist, and I am helping out with people who have mental health challenges and helping them to get their lives back on track.
Excellent. And I forgot to say also in the chat, if you want to just drop in why you're at this meeting as well. I know there's a few committee members, but if they're, also what brings you here. In the interest of time, I don't think we have time to do it in the verbal intros, but we would love to hear that too. Ralph, how about you?
Hi, I'm Ralph Payton. I am with GRIP, the Greater Richmond Interfaith Program Executive Director.
Welcome. Good to see you. Leslie Gleason, let's have you introduce yourself.
Sorry, you caught me mid-bite.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
why I'm hiding. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Gleason. I'm with Trinity Center, and I'm also on the Council on Homelessness. So good to be here today.
Thanks. Carry on with the eating. Fedi.
Hey, Jamie. Hey, everyone. My name is Fedi El Hayek. I am the program director for H3. I'm over our adult shelters, Brookside Shelter, Concord Shelter, and the Philip Thorne Respite Center. I'm over our youth program, including Cali House, Pomona, and Mary McGovern. I'm over our permanent supportive housing programs, Destination Home, Permanent Connections, and Hume, and our and HUMS. I'm sorry, long day. Those acronyms, HUMS. And I'm also over core outreach. So happy to be here.
Good to have you, Fedi. Kiva, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kiva Dean. I hold the community representative seat on the Council on Homelessness. I'm also on the Equity Committee, newly formed Equity Committee. I also am on the board of directors for Contra Costa Solano Food Bank. I'm a county employee, and I'm a CAPP Collaborative Advocacy Power Partnership participant as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kiva. How about you, Meredith?
Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Rupp. I'm a policy fellow working with the City of Antioch on some housing initiatives.
Awesome. Great. Who's next? Teresa Carr.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Carr, and I'm on this meeting on behalf of Senator Bill Dodd.
Great, thanks. Pamela. Pam McGrath, I don't know if you can hear us. Okay, we're going to skip her. We'll come back. Robert Camp.
Hi, I'm Robert Kemp. I'm with Community Works. I am an outreach coordinator with them. I'm looking for clients, either homeless or transitioning out of incarceration to provide services to. So that's why my presence is here at this meeting.
Great, good to have you. Joe, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Joe Bruno here, lived experience advisor representing Delta Peers in Antioch. Currently the lived experience advisor on the Council for Homelessness, as well as vice chair on the council. It's good to be here.
Excellent, thank you. For folks that just joined, we're asking folks just to introduce themselves with name and any affiliation you want to give. So it could be agency, could be neighborhood, could be groups that you're part of. Is it Alyssa?
Hi, Elisa Robinson.
Oh, sorry.
I am with the Office of Supervisor Diane Burgess. It's my first meeting with you all, so happy to be here and discuss. I'm going to have to leave a little bit early, so I apologize ahead of time, but hopefully I'll catch the recording later.
Great, glad to have you here. Benisa Berry, hopefully I'm saying that right. Let me know if it's not right.
Yes, that was absolutely correct, Benisa. And I am with the Center for Human Development, also with the East Bay Community Leaders Network, and I am who's very interested in what's happening around housing and homelessness and equity. And so I was just interested in how this committee will be moving forward.
Excellent. Let's see, Rachel.
Hi there, I'm Rachel Rosekind, and I never like doing these things, and it's kind of windy in the background, so I apologize. But so in terms of the county, I'm on the Library Commission, but I'm really part of a lot of different efforts and initiatives around racial equity, social justice, and economic inclusion, not just in the county, but state and national. So glad to be here. Excited. Thanks.
Glad to have you here. Thanks. Jan Warren.
Hi, Jamie. Nice to see Benisa and Joe and the rest of y'all. Jan Warren, I'm Chair of Multi-Faith Action Housing Coalition and also East Bay Community Leaders Network. Thanks.
Great. Khalil.
Good afternoon, everyone. Khalil Macklin with Anthem Blue Cross. I'm the County Account Manager with the Medicaid program with Anthem Blue Cross.
Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle Moorhead. I know they just.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Michelle Moorhead for the African American Wellness Program. I'm the community health advocate on our program. Is a program through the Center for Human Development, which is in Concord. And I am glad to be at this meeting.
Good to have you. Alex Atkinson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Atkinson, the Chief Operating Officer at Hope Solutions. We serve over 2,000 people a year who are either housed or unhoused to help them find and maintain housing. I am here because as an organization, we are very committed to this. And as a Contra Costa resident, I'm very curious because equity, I hear a lot of people talk about equity, and for me, it really comes down to, I know there's equity when the outcomes are pretty much the same across different demographics. And so that's what I'm really keen on helping in whatever way I can achieve.
Great. For those of you who are new, we're doing intros, but also I've asked folks if you have it in you in the chat to put in how you would define equity for yourself. And then Jamie Schechter, I think you might be our last one.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry to have been running a little bit late today, but I'm Jamie Schechter. I'm with H3. I'm the COC director. It's good to see you. And Jamie, am I missing anything else?
Nope, you're great. You're doing good. I know it's been a day. So I'm going to start sharing slides. By the way, this is being recorded both for us to be able to take notes later and in case folks have missed the meeting and want to catch up later. I am going to share my screen. And Jamie and I are going to kind of tag team this. And I also, Jamie, while I'm presenting, will you just monitor chat and we'll do vice versa?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so we did a little roll call. You'll notice under purpose of the meeting, we still have that a little blank. So that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later too. But what I wanted to do is just a level set for everybody why we are here. So some of you have been part of these conversations for a long time in our COC, and some of you might just be coming to this table, even though you've been part of other tables talking about equity. So big picture, just to catch you up to like where we are right now. Mind you, I'm having trouble tracking time because of the pandemic. So I'm going to say loosely, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, I don't know exactly, we engaged an outside agency to conduct an assessment of our homeless system of care through an equity lens, basically to like take a snapshot of what we were doing on a whole bunch of axes, right? So like looking at policies and procedures, talking to people on the ground, talking to staff, talking to people using our services, really a pretty comprehensive assessment, looking at our data. So I heard Alex, I heard you talk about outcomes. So looking at a bunch of different pieces of our system. And essentially they gave us a report that said, here are the things that you're doing well, here are where you have some challenges. And it had a list of 51 individual recommendations, which is great, but like you can't take on 51 things at the same time. So we began this process of trying to sort of filter down and winnow out what are the most sort of pressing and most efficient things to pick first so that we can move the needle quickly on improving equity in our system of care. And I'll step back. I think everybody's got a lot of different definitions of equity, and I love that. I think for our purposes, actually, Alex summed it up pretty well in terms of what we're looking at a system level, which is to make sure that outcomes cannot be predicted by somebody's demographic characteristics, right? So that I can't look and say like, oh, I see their race and their class or their ethnicity or their sexual orientation. And based on the data we have, like I can predict that they're going to do better or do worse, because that means there's a systems issue, right? That means there are things built into our system that are driving those unequal outcomes. So what we're trying to do as a system of care is we know there are inequities about who comes to our front door, but we also want to see when somebody hits the front door of our homeless system of care, how can we get people the resources that they need so that everybody is having good outcomes? That's sort of the nutshell. So we looked at all these 51 recommendations, and we sort of looked at the level of effort it would take to do those things. We looked at the level of impact, right? So there could be something that's really easy, but it's maybe like not really going to make a big difference. So maybe we spend our energy somewhere else. We had a whole working group that was formed to really chew on this stuff. We did some community input opportunities. And basically what the work group did was like shook that basket until what came up were they came up with a final recommendation, both for what should be focused on in our system of care for next year, and also what the structure is. Those got proposed to the Council on Homelessness recently in September. And what got decided was that a separate committee would be formed. So this is the very first meeting of that committee. Woo, we did it. We have something concrete. And the priority that emerged as the thing to focus on for 2023 was creating accessible information, outreach, and educational materials to engage hard to reach or previously unreached communities in Contra Costa County. So this is the North Star for this group for next year. We will see where we, as we get close to the end of next year, we'll look and see how we are doing on this and what our next focus might be. But for the next year, this is really what we're going to focus on. And in terms of a timeline of kind of like where we are on working towards that, this again sort of recaps what I described about like the work to date. So October, we're here now, right? We're having our first equity committee meeting. Like this is it, we're in it. Today, we're going to talk about work plans, sort of this idea of work plans, because what we want to do is we don't want to just say, cool, we've decided we're going to work on this and then spend a whole year trying to figure out how to do that, right? And then get to the end of the year and be like, well, what did we actually do? So we want to take between now and the end of December to really nail down a concrete work plan. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. So today we're going to sort of introduce the idea of work plans, what they are, what they might look like, why they're useful. Next month in November, we're going to come together again. And we as staff, Jamie and I as staff, are going to draft something for this group to respond to, wiggle, edit, and draft some goals. December, we're going to meet again and really try and finalize that work plan. So come January, we are ready to go. We know what we're doing. And we're going to know how to do it. So that's just like a really quick, that's like a very quick thumbnail sketch of sort of where we've been and where we are right now. Are there questions about any of that, like big macro stuff?
I am so excited. That's all I gotta
We're
say.
here, it's happening. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Okay. Nope, that's my own hand. I was like, I see a question. Nope, it's my own hand. Okay, so let me go back to sharing screen for a minute. Of course, it takes me back to the beginning. Hold please. Okay, so that's like big picture timeline. What we're going to move to now, and Jamie Schechter, I'm so glad you're here. We're going to start talking about what is a work plan. So some of us may be really, really familiar with these. For some of us, this may be a new concept. So we just want to level set a little bit. And Jamie, I'll be your Vanna. You tell me when you want me to go to the next slide. If you want me to stop sharing so you can share, just let me know.
Sounds great. Okay, so we didn't want to start this off assuming everybody knew what a work plan was and how to create one and all of that. So we want to give everyone a primer and get thoughts on what you think works well as a structure, because our overall goal is that all of our Council on Homelessness committees who are working with a work plan have a consistent structure and a consistent way of looking at it, so that it's easy for all the committees to know what other folks are doing, where their intersections are, and to report back up to the full council on how the work is going, because the work of the council is really the work of our committees as well, and vice versa. They're all overlapping and intersecting. So at a really top level, a work plan has a few components, right? There are goals that get baked into it. It defines what you want to achieve over that course of time. Our priority statement is really big, and it can be achieved 100 different ways or more. So it's helpful to set some goals so you can get a little bit of structure. There's some strategy. So you're not just setting goals all in one area of the priority potentially, but you're actually looking at all of what different ways that could tackle the overall goal, and provides that kind of long view of how does your work build upon itself, and how does it reach across the whole year. And there are timelines. We're going to set some measurable milestones. So again, we're not just having conversation after conversation without being able to report back, reflect back, and understand when we're trying to accomplish things. And then it really can help us name and identify our partners and give everybody insight and transparency, so that we can foster better collaboration with our partners in the council and different committees, with our provider network, with each other, with people who are accessing services. That's really one of the biggest benefits to a really good work plan. Next slide. Okay, so this is where, just to give folks an example, and I'm notorious for closing the window that I actually wanted to show. One moment.
Let me know if you need me to pull it up.
Nope.
Oh, you know what I'm also going to do is share a link to the agenda and the packet for this meeting. So everybody can also pull up the materials if you need to. I'll put that in the chat.
Great. Okay. So I just shared in the chat the Council on Homelessness work plan. And I'm hoping you all can see my screen now, and it's the work plan screen and not my calendar. Thumbs up, confirmation. Great, perfect, thank you. So this is a work plan that the Council on Homelessness used to guide 2022's work. And we can definitely do something similar. We can go radically different.
Jamie, can you make it bigger? Sorry, yes. It's kind of small.
Yep, I can do that. It can, there's 1,000 different ways to tackle this and 1,000 different ways that you can do it right. So we've got a lot of creative freedom and flexibility to do this. But this was the 2022 work plan, and it really was broken down by quarters, which I find helpful because it lets you check in every quarter and see, hey, did we do the things that we wanted to do? And looking forward, are the things that we thought we were going to do still the things we're doing? And it keeps it pretty high level. One of the hardest things about a work plan is finding that balance in detail, because you don't want to make it so that you're spending half your time updating the thing with all the activities that you've done or haven't done. But you also don't want to make it so vague that it just sits in a file somewhere and you never look at it again. So I just wanted to be able to share this example of what's a work plan that's been used in our community before, and how we want to work to make it more usable, more user-friendly, all of that fun stuff. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. And Jamie, if you could pull up the slideshow again. Perfect. And I thought this would be a great place to actually talk about SMARTY goals. So this is something that I think would be helpful in this conversation. So a lot of folks might have heard of SMART goals before, but something that I've really been interested in digging into more are SMARTY goals. And this is a resource that I stole from the Management Center. They're a great resource, and I will drop the link in the chat to their whole equity and inclusion page that's full of really good templates and trainings and all of those fun things. But a SMART goal looks at strategic, measurable, ambitious, realistic, and time-bound as details and facets of setting a goal. A SMARTY goal also makes sure that you're considering inclusion and equity when you're making goals. So this is a way to not just say, well, I want to buy a car, but it's a way of saying, I want to buy a car by January 2023. And to do that, I will be saving $100 every week out of my paycheck. It really helps to set those parameters to make it achievable, to make it challenging, and to make it so that you know what success looks like when you're on the other end. And then bringing in that inclusivity and equitable lens, it really makes you ask those questions of who's benefiting and who's not, who's being left out, who's got a seat at the table, how is this decision having consequences or addressing systemic injustice or having unintended consequences. So it's really giving a framework to, as you're creating goals for the work plan, to dig into what's our impact on equity, and that's particularly relevant for this group. Any questions about SMARTY goals, thoughts, ideas?
Does anybody have any experience using or setting those kind of goals? Either SMARTY or SMART? I see a couple hands, Lauren, Alex. I'm curious to hear how has that gone for you? Like, has that been useful? Has it been challenging to set them? Has it been helpful to have them? Is it Yanad?
Hello, everyone. Yes, Yanad, excuse my camera. Definitely familiar with SMART. I was excited to see the SMART-E. I thought that was so accountable, definitely keeping things on track. I believe the only thing I would say is there's always great intention when these processes are started. It's the continuity of the implementation. So just making sure that part is actually happening, then I think it can be a better experience overall. Thank you.
I love that. And I agree 100%. I hate when a work plan goes to a drawer to die because you spend so much time building them and then they're not useful. Let's make something useful and let's make a tool that we're going to use. So I really appreciate that.
And I appreciate that too. And one of the things that I think I'll point out is now that this is an official committee to the Council on Homelessness, we will be expected to report back on our progress to the council every month. Even, you know, sometimes we might do it in a staff report if there's nothing big, but if we have big stuff or big results or something coming up, like there not only is an opportunity, but an obligation to publicly be tracking our progress. So I think that will also help address some of that, because it's, yes, I've seen it happen so many times. You have this, I mean, I've done it myself. I've set work plans for things and then 6 months later, I'm like, what was I supposed to do? All right, I have this whole pretty thing and I haven't looked at it. So I don't think that's not how we're going to do things. And it's great to have folks committed to that to help keep us accountable. Anybody else have experience, thoughts, comments about using work plans and particularly goal setting?
I just like the inclusive in there because it's the only one that really speaks to the process. I mean, sort of building on what Yanan just mentioned, that it really is how we do it that measures whether it's inclusive, and I think makes it effective to be equitable. I think the trick is to find out what is really equitable. And also the one thing I would add too, and this is sort of getting just to this committee, what I'm hoping we get to is, you know, being able to say where we're starting from in terms of outcomes. You know, and again, I will say this, I've been on a whole bunch of meetings the last 3 years, and I know everyone talks about how the disproportionality for Native Americans in the homeless system is 9 to 1. And and for some reason, that's where the conversation has ended. I'm looking to see what the conversation can, you know, will look like after that.
Teresa, I see your hand up.
You do. I just have a question as to how this equity program is going to connect with the county's equity department, or exactly what they're putting together, because they're getting ready to receive their plan, and And so I was just wondering how the two were going to connect.
That's a great question. I can speak to that a little bit as a person who's kind of been the liaison. So the staff of the county sort of equity team is on our listserv, and they are seeing that we're having these meetings, and we are also, like, I was just at the big report out that they had. So we're staying connected and informed about what's going on. And I'm curious to see sort of what the scope is, right? Like, our scope for the Council on Homelessness is very specific and narrow, which I always love, right? My question is always like, what is our lane? Where are the boundaries for what we're doing? What we're doing is really focused on people experiencing homelessness, and we now have a very clear North Star about what we're going to focus on. I think, to other people's points, the challenge or where we really get to be creative is in like how we're going to achieve those goals, how we are going to be inclusive in the process, not just in like the product. So I'm hoping that what comes out of the county, the bigger county equity process, that there's some guidelines or some structures or some framework that we can borrow and adapt to the work that we're doing here. So the short answer is, like, we're a little bit working in parallel right now, but I think we're all figuring out, like where the track is, and very much connected. And so if any of you are like deeply involved in that other work, by all means, or if you're involved in other kinds of equity work, please bring your thinking, your ideas, your structures that are working in other kinds of work, and bring those here. There's no set path for how we're going to do this. But there are, I mean, as to your point, it's like every field right now, equity is sort of the buzzword. And that's part of why I just asked folks to like define it, for yourselves, because I think it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I'll just put a finer note on the assessment that was done of our system of care was specifically around race and ethnicity. It was really looking very narrowly at race and ethnicity. The North Star that we ended up with of like creating these materials feels maybe for some people kind of like far away from that. Like, how is that connected to race and ethnicity? But if you look at who is coming to our front door, there are really big disparities in there. So I think as we're building these materials, as we're building this educational tools and processes, we're going to keep that data in mind of like, who are our primary audiences and who do we need to bring to the table to help build this stuff so that people that are most impacted are part of these conversations. So that was a lot of words. But any other, Teresa, did that answer your question? I know that was a long answer.
Kind of. I'm following it, and because I, have also had some experiences with the other group, and then of course I want to see what the council has to say, or I should say the supervisors have to say, and so I'm kind of just trying to connect the dots myself.
Yep. So if it feels fuzzy, that's not a you issue. I think, they're also figuring out what their path is as we're figuring out what our path is, and they are connected, but also a little bit separate. And I don't honestly know what their sort of end product is going to look like. But that is probably something that we will bring to this group when they come out with whatever their sort of official piece is. I think we can look at that as it relates to the work we're doing here as well. Rachel, and then Yanad.
The other piece I wanted to add too is the launch of the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. So that is on the agenda for 2 weeks, the 25th of October. The plan will be unveiled that the core committee has been working on with extensive community input for the past couple of years. And so that is another really great kind of vehicle and instrument that everyone in this group and people kind of broadly involved in equity should really tap into. And if you can attend that meeting, because it will be pretty monumental. But I just wanted to kind of flag that because that's another pivot of the county's equity and specifically racial equity efforts that we should track.
Great, thank you. Is it Yanad? Am I saying it right?
Yes, Ianad.
Yanad, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Well, even through Zoom, great minds think alike, because Rachel, that was exactly what I was about to say. So look at this. I was actually going to ask, is there some overlap? So you've just, well, I guess there will be maybe, huh? So exactly the work that Rachel just mentioned was my question. Will this overlap with that office?
It's a good question. What I can say is my role. Okay, so I'll just back up for a second. So I work for the County Health, Housing and Homeless Services Division. And one of my roles, so I'm the community engagement specialist. So part of my role is to step outside our little bubble of homeless services and see like what other departments, divisions, fields are doing and like where there's overlap. So that is something I'm tracking, but pretty lightly right now. So I think as these things are gelling in these other fields, I'm starting to have more conversations with some of those players. So I say that all to say, if you see stuff that you think we in our world need to be tracking, send that stuff to me and I will, or if you're involved in those things, like don't be shy. You know, part of what we're doing is like bringing together a bunch of people with expertise. That includes all of you working in these other related fields. So nothing concrete at this point, but it's definitely, we're all kind of keeping track of each other's work. And if you have specific info that you think we need to have or meetings we need to be at that you know about, they might not be on our radar, so let us know.
And what I would also say too is this could be something we set a goal around, right? Throughout the year, how are we coordinating with all these various committees that or offices or whatnot that exist in the county, and how are we getting, you know, opportunities for input, opportunities for decision making out to folks who are unhoused or living in our housing programs. So that could be a lens that we take in expanding access to those broader initiatives to the people we're working with day in and day out.
That's a great example, Jamie. Kiva, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak up very quickly about the fuzziness of things, and just to remind everybody that part of this work has to do with diversity. And everybody knows that diversity takes on has many facets, and it has many faces, it has many textures and colors. And so just that part of it alone is going to lend to the fact that this has got to be a living organism. This cannot be something, oh, we got something down, it's concrete, now we're moving forward. No, this is a moving vehicle. And the vehicle's already on, it's already moving, and maybe going in a different direction than we want to go, but it is already a moving vehicle, right? And so we can't just, I just want us to keep in mind that even though there doesn't always seem to be a concrete direction or concrete thing that we're waiting for. That's the whole point. We're not waiting for that concrete thing. We're moving with the information that we have. We're moving forward with the information that we have. And then as we need to, we'll either change directions or tweak it in some way. This is a moving vehicle, and it's got a lot of different moving parts. So I just wanted to add to, so that's why it's fuzzy.
Jamie, you look like you're talking, but your sound is not coming through.
Hold on.
Oh, wait, we can hear you a little bit.
How about now?
Yep.
Technology. I was just saying, Kiva, I really appreciate that. Part of my mantra with this work has to be, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Because it is so, like, even in this work planning process, we could spend an entire year crafting a work plan and never actually get to the work because we want it to get just right. We want the words to be just right. And I think that's such an important thing to remember as we're doing this, is like, it's going to be messy. It might not be clear. It might not be pretty. It might not be comfortable. But as we know better, we are going to be doing better. So I think that's so, I mean, that's just like my personal challenge, is to just keep moving, even when it's not perfect, and keep trying to do better and bring in. And part of it too is like recognizing like, oh, we don't have the right voices in the room. Who do we need to bring in? Sometimes that's the challenge. So yeah, really appreciate that. I wanted to just pause. There were some new folks that showed up since we did our round of intros. So I think there's 4 new folks that showed up. Ianad, so what we're asking folks is your name and any affiliation you want to give. So it's an agency, a community, whatever neighborhood, however you want to identify. Would love to have you introduce yourself. So I'll call names just so we don't get chaotic. So we've got Ianad. I'm going to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Ianad Burrell, lived in Richmond the past 25 years. I'm a CPAW member, and my own company, Glasshouse Communications, is my public relations and strategic communication agency I've had for about 15 years. Love, love, love all things comms. So, yeah.
Excellent. Do you mind explaining what CPAW is for folks that might not know?
Yes, and I've always
I can never remember what it stands for.
Yeah, myself included. So this stays between this call, okay? I just know Consolidated Planning Association Work Group, but it falls under the mental health, the Contra Costa Behavioral Health. And so under that, we have the all these acronyms, the MHSA, and then under that are these subcommittees. So I represent the marginalized communities, and every month we meet and we bring challenges and issues to the committee. They then share it with the representatives on the Mental Health Services Act Commission. And then, so they're aware. So we're trying to be the ambassadors. This is my 5th year. The past 2.5 don't count. We all know why. So probably 2 active years and 2.5, I have no idea what was going on, but here we are. So
great. Thank you. I'll have Susan introduce themselves, then Justin, then there was somebody else, but I'll start with that. Susan and then Justin. Or maybe Justin.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Justin Van Zerber. I'm a resident of District 1. I moved out here about 2.5 years ago. And just excited to get involved in this work. About 12 years in nonprofit experience, working with homeless, reentry, and young adults. So excited to be on the call and learn from everyone today.
Great, thanks, Justin. I don't know if Susan, if you can unmute, but if not, let's also hear from Sarah Abdallah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. Well, I'm currently entering it. I can never say that correctly, but I'm currently in internship with Hume for case management. And it's basically to help people with mental health disorders to become stable in life. And part of that, of course, is homelessness and finding them housing and all that. And I myself have been affected by homelessness and in recovery. And during that whole time, I was living in the car with my children for a while as well. So this is very important. And I hope to, in the future, I would say 7 years from now or so, to be able to found my own nonprofit for homelessness, especially women and children. So yeah, thank you guys for having this.
Glad to have you here and your experience and expertise. That's great. Donald, it's your hand up.
Yeah, and that was Sarah and me and her in the same program. And we are in the same room and we are attending the meeting right now. And I also have lived experience with mental health. And, you know, it's been a bit of a passion of mine. And in recovery, I've discovered that I am of value and I do bring something to the table, especially being a person of color, being a Black man. And hopefully when people see a face that is similar to mine in the Black community, it won't be so stigmatized, mental health and homelessness.
Absolutely. This is why I love this work. I'm really glad you're both here. Anybody that did not yet introduce themselves? Okay. Okay, I have a few more sort of formally things to talk about, but feel free to interrupt at any point if you have questions or don't understand or. So I want to talk about work plans as a collaborative tool. And part of what we think about when we think about a work plan is who's going to look at this and use it. And so there's actually potentially a bunch of different audiences for whatever work plan or different versions of a work plan that we come up with. So COH is the Council on Homelessness. So that obviously the council, as sort of the oversight body of this committee, will want to know what our work plan is, and that helps them know what to expect from us, what to kind of keep track of. The Equity Committee, that's us. We need a work plan because we need to know what the heck we're working on. Other committees. So there are, at this point, at least 4 other committees that are going to have their own work plans that have equity embedded in there. So part of what we're also trying to figure out is make sure that they know what our goals are, we know what their goals are, and can really see where there are opportunities to collaborate, overlap, make sure that we're not working in silos, because so often, you know, this work can happen, like, even it's happening, this is kind of what came up in the conversation, right? There's all these different departments now that are focusing on equity. What the heck does that mean? What are they doing? And are we all reinventing the wheel, or are we all sort of working towards a common purpose? PWLE, sorry for all the acronyms. This is the short way of saying people with lived experience. So we used to use the word consumer to talk about people with lived experience of homelessness in our community. So people with lived experience that are both involved in this work, but also that are experiencing homelessness and using services may be interested in what this committee's focused on. When I say stakeholders, this is actually referencing some of the other groups that came up, right? Office of Reentry and Justice, Mental Health Commission. There's a lot of other adjacent partners that are working on equity and are really interested in what's happening in our system of care. And then lastly, and there's probably more, which we can talk about, but H3 staff. So that's like Jamie and I, right? That's like, okay, what are the things that we need to keep track of? And sometimes there's internal stuff that we need to do about getting stuff on agendas for council meetings or for building these kind of agendas. So there's potentially a lot of different audiences. And part of why we talk about this too is like the level of detail that we might have for H3 staff might have like every nut and bolt and every like an outline of every meeting and when they have to happen. Community members don't need that level of detail. So what we showed for you around the Council on Homelessness example, like that's very high level, and that may be something, we may make something like that public, but for our Equity Committee, we may have something that's month by month so that we are very clear what we're trying to accomplish every month. So just thinking about the audiences, and then also thinking about, I touched on this a little bit, but like who else do we need to coordinate with? So there's some people that are just interested just because they just want to know. And then there's other partners, as we said, like that might want to coordinate. So this came up around stakeholders, right? What is the Office of Reentry and Justice coming out with? Are, you know, all these different departments or subgroups that are working on equity, what are they coming up with? And let's make sure that we're all coordinated. Are there other kinds of partners that you're thinking that we need to be mindful of as we're coordinating? So we have like council, all of our committees, people with lived experience, stakeholders broadly, but are there any specific bodies that you think that we should particularly reach out to, be tracking more carefully what they're working on? Donald, I see your hand up.
Actually, it was up from last time.
Oh, sorry. So I've heard a couple, there's like County Health Services has now like a Department of Equity that they're working on stuff. There's like a broader county group around equity. If there's any others that you think of as we go, let us know. And that's part of our role as staff, is like, we'll try and do an even better job of keeping an eye on that. Joe, and then Inad.
Yeah, the stakeholder.
Oh, you just muted.
The stakeholder bucket.
Yeah.
Does that include faith-based? Does that include like you say, okay, also with like people with lived experience, but there's like people living in the current crisis of homeless, not necessarily those using the
Uh-huh.
shelters or using any like who, I mean, like there's that,
Yep.
that unknown. I thought of faith-based and, you know, like people who use like sleeping in the car on the parking
Yeah.
lots, that like that whole, I don't know if they're in the stakeholder position or if that's the people with lived experience position, but
That's a good question. I mean, I think it could be however we define it. Stakeholders is very broad. But I sort of think of that sort of in the umbrella of like, if people are providing homeless services or accessing homeless services, I sort of think of that as the inner bubble. And then stakeholders is like everybody sort of that isn't specifically focused on homelessness, but is, providing services to, reaching out to, having contact with, concerned about homelessness and what's happening for people.
right. And so the state, so that stakeholder, that
Mhm.
is a very, very broad.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at is like,
Mhm.
it is really that broad.
And I think one of the things we can do in a work plan is drill down, like, so there's like, 1 million stakeholders. Are there 5 that we want to focus on this year, building stronger relationships with as we're, doing this kind of work, that kind of thing. So right now we're at like 30,000 feet and eventually we're going to get down to the ground, but not today, if that helps. Okay, Ianad and then Lauren.
Thank you. One of
Yeah.
the reasons that I was interested in being on this call and being a part of this conversation is my interest around health equity, but particularly around access, the access points. And there are so many often that a resident, a community member is not aware. So wherever that will fit, wherever
You're in the
that
right place. That's our focus. I don't know if you caught it. I'm going to drop it in the chat what the goal is for this committee for 2023. I'm just going to put it in the chat because
I may have come after you said that this earlier.
All right.
And then I just wanted to mention 2 years in a row when there were seats available on the Homeless Advisory Committee.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you list all those areas, right? And I didn't fit in any. And that's not to say I'm privileged because I didn't fit in any, but they were very specific. They said either you are from this agency or that. It just was so, and it was frustrating because I wanted to be there, but I didn't. So when this came, I said, okay, there are no barriers to this. I can be here. I can be a part of it. So just hungry to support in a way and just happy that it didn't require anything. People who are interested, who are here, who want to give, who have the time, make the time, all that. So I wanted just to mention that. So thank you.
I really appreciate that. And I'm just going to say, like, I just had a whole brainstorm while you were talking, which is like one of the things that could come out of this committee is a recommendation to the council to create more broad seats, because you're right, we do have a lot of very narrow seats that only like one person could possibly fit in if they're the representative from this particular department.
Yes.
So to that end, we are this year we have 1 lived experience seat and 1 youth representative seat. Those both are for people with lived experience. Next year, we're going to have 2 lived experience seats plus a youth seat, but we still only have 1 community seat. So one of the recommendations from this group could be like add 2, whatever, however many, add some more avenues because one of the things, the goal is create accessible information, outreach, and educational materials to engage hard to reach or previously unreached communities. But also there is this piece about sharing power. So amplifying what you're saying. Absolutely. Lauren and then Rachel.
I guess I would like to see that stakeholders who are actually out there doing the work on the ground, they don't need to have a seat on this particular committee, but they need to be advised to be able to tune into this committee. And I don't think we're doing that. I think that places like Trinity Center, your partners who work out there, and I know that there are other areas, other places like that, many other good places like that in the county. The other thing is that there is no representation from our major municipalities. And our major municipalities hold a huge stake and responsibility. And I think they need to send people not to be on the committee, but to come to the meeting so that they are aware of what is going on. We're working in these silos, and we have to somehow be able to break down the silos. If we don't have people from Antioch, Pittsburgh, Richmond, Concord, Walnut Creek, San Ramon, and these areas sitting at the table, they have huge amounts of funding that are also available to them that the county may not have. So I really don't think it's not so important to have a seat on the committee, but be aware of what the committee is doing. And we have to reach out to these people.
Yep. And I want to flag, just like, again, holding big picture in your brain. So part of what we're talking about are like materials directly for, here's how you access homeless services. But there's this whole layer of like, here's how you get involved in this work, and here's how you get in these conversations, and here's how you get your voice heard. There's a lot of work to be done around that, of like the different kinds of committees that we have and how do you access them. And yes, absolutely. And we do have some city reps attending some things, but that could be, as you said, like that could be another focus. Rachel.
Thanks. So I'm just going to piggyback on both those comments and just speak to, I think it's incredibly important to enhance community representation across the districts. The needs and circumstances of people, living with homelessness or housing insecurity in East County are different than Central County, are different than West County, are different than South County. And to me, that is inclusion and diversity. Like if we're going to, emphasize and amplify those experiences and voices, then we need to bring them to, I think bringing them formally to the committee. I agree on the, it's great for them to attend, but I think there is an accountability and a feedback loop when somebody is sitting on a commission or a committee, and even that they're in a position that they then can communicate with supervisors or city council members. It lends credibility to that person. I've seen it in multiple forums. So I just want to kind of lift up that recommendation more broadly.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to mention, just like we're also in a parallel process of equity work launching, we are have just done a bunch of recruitment for open seats for the Council on Homelessness. And there is a very specific scoring rubric for those applications coming in. And part of the rubric includes making sure that we have representation across the county, and looking at who's currently seated or who's going to be in those seats for sure next year. And with the new seats, we have weighted the seats, weighted those regions differently. So for example, Far East County gets the most points, East County gets the next most points, all the way down until it's like serving the whole county. We already have a lot of folks like that on our county, on the council. So I think that, our county, more than a lot of others, like this geographical representation is really important. And our Council on Homelessness doesn't have seats by region in the way that some advisory boards do, but we that is something that we really do look at. But I also hear your other point, Rachel, about like, it's not just having people from those communities, but people from those communities that have access to levers of power, and making sure that they're part of these conversations here and sort of pollinating with the power holders that they are connected to. Absolutely. I love this conversation. Let me just take a look and see. Hold on one second. Oh, well, this is perfect. So what I want to check in with everyone is just a little temperature check on how people are feeling. Some of you came into this meeting knowing absolutely nothing about what this committee is going to be working on. We now know what the focus is for 2023. We know that next month and the month after, we're really going to drill down on building a work plan. And then starting January 2023, we're really going to start that work. How are folks feeling about all of this? Are folks feeling like they want to stay engaged in this? There's no commitment, but just want to do kind of a temperature check about how folks are feeling. And especially, how do you feel about the process of building a work plan? We're about to get into that next month. Is anybody feeling a little nervous about it? I am, just because it's like, it's important, and it always feels like an octopus to me. This is where I've been like, Jamie Schechter, this is your, you have good strength and skills in this area.
Hi, this is Ianat. It may
Yeah.
sound a little strange, but
No.
I'm looking forward to the challenge of the brain. It's been 2 years of OM without the G. So I'm ready to get the juices flowing, to start thinking and designing.
Love it.
It's going to be fun.
Excellent. Anybody else? Is there anybody that super loves work plans and like, this is how your brain works? You have lots of experience and you can't wait to get into it? OM without the G. Yes. All right.
Jamie,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just
Eva,
love,
please.
I just like to say that I hold a community representative seat, and I love the idea of having more than one or doing it regionally. That would lend to so much support, because I'm doing so many other different things, and I don't always have the opportunity to reach out to not just other communities, but my own community and find out what's going on. So that would be really a great way to be a support for one another. If we could be like a support for one another, because then we would be able to network. That extension or expansion of the community representative seat would really be phenomenal. And I think it would be very substantive for the council.
I've heard this a couple of times, and what I'll plug here is that the governance committee of the Council on Homelessness is tasked with annually updating our bylaws, which is where we name the seats within the council. I would highly, highly recommend, if you haven't already, sign up for our newsletters. Make sure you're checking off governance committee as a list that you want to be attached to, because they're not a meeting every month kind of committee. They're an ad hoc committee that has really specific project focus, and that's going to be the platform to kind of give that input and shape the council composition in the future.
I'm about to put in the chat the link for that. Hold on. Link for mailing list. So there's a bunch of different options. If you get confused, just ping me. I'm going to put my email in here too. I'm happy to like hop on a call with you where we share screen and I can help you figure out which things you want to actually sign up for, because we have a lot. But we do have, so we have all our different committees. We have different sort of topics of interest. We have lots of stuff, but good point, Jamie. Yep. All right. What I wanted to check in with this group next is, so our next step is, today we introduce work plans. We're going to give you all a little bit of homework because we want to come back in November with a draft. Jamie and I are going to work behind the scenes to draft a work plan and draft some goals just as like a starting place, but really want to have your thinking in those meetings. So do a little like brainstorming ahead of time. Then we want to meet again in December and we would finalize the work plan. And I want to propose, and so this is just a proposal, we can totally change this, but looking at calendars and other meetings, looking at maybe for the next 2 meetings, have it be the second Tuesday of the month from 2:30 to 4:30. So that would be November 8th and December 13th. I want to see, are there any people for whom that is like a definite no? If you can put in the chat if that's a definite no for either or both of those.
Hi, it's Ianat. I just want to highlight the 8th is election day. I don't know.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. Okay, that's really good to know. Are there other days? I think what we're trying to do is just like kind of keep it on a regular schedule, at least for the rest of this year. Are there people here that like absolutely could not make it for 2 hours on the afternoon of the 8th? And especially Joe and Juno, Juno, hello, Joe and Kiva, as the two official members of this committee. Okay, I'm seeing some people can make it. Okay. And Kiva, it looks like you could probably make it too. Okay, so I know it won't be perfect. I think we're gonna stick with that for now, just so that we can get those two, and then we'll figure out the next year. Hopefully in December. And then Jamie, I don't know if you have thoughts about sort of brainstorming instructions for people about like resources, community input, possible goals for, and then we'll talk about the description in a minute, but like what folks should be brainstorming between now and when we meet on November 8th.
And just as a side note, we can definitely plug to make sure folks are going out to vote on November.
Yes.
Like, give us an opportunity to bug everybody. But what I think would be helpful, so I linked the presentation from our August, I believe it was August Equity Working Group, where Kiva, Joe, and Juno came back to the rest of the committee or the working group and said, here's what we heard during these input sessions that we facilitated. And we got a lot of really good ideas from our community on what tackling equity in our system of care could look like. So I don't want y'all feeling like you have to think of an idea from scratch. No need to reinvent the wheel. If you want to dig into these recommendations and really understand what's already been recommended. We also have on the H3 website that C4 innovations report that Jamie talked about at the very beginning. That's a dense chunk of reading, so it might just be easier to go through the previous equity committee meetings and kind of get the synthesized version of that. But it's also available if you want to really dig into where we started and how we got here. And what I really want to share is that the approach that we want to take, right? We want to make sure that we're setting goals that are tangible, they're specific, they have outcomes that we can measure. So think about what that means to you. When you think about a goal that would be meaningful for this committee, when you're brainstorming, think about how you would know it was successful, how you would know that it has inclusion and equity baked into it. What are the questions you would want to ask this group to tailor that goal and to set benchmarks and targets and all of those fun things?
Yes, absolutely. With remembering that our North Star, our overall goal at the end of 2023, what we want to have done is created accessible information, outreach, and educational materials for hard to reach or previously unreached folks in Contra Costa. So whatever you think will drive us to that North Star, that's what we're going to need. I wanted to just take a quick note. So on the meeting date, I think we're going to probably stick with the 8th because the 15th is there's an HMIS policy committee meeting, and some of the members on this committee are also required to be at that other meeting. So I don't want to have set up that conflict for them. Joe, go ahead.
Just a quick question in the let me go back to it. I realized that I was talking and I was muted. So I missed this. So the North Star that you just mentioned. So accessible for information, outreach, and education, all that stuff. Will we start having the discussion about like the what information, the who to outreach to, and the definition of educational materials? Is that where we're headed next?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so next meeting, we are going to start getting specific.
Okay, great. Yeah, that
Who,
was
what, when, where, why, and how. That's what we're going to start
Wonderful.
documenting so that we know, so that we're going to be able to say December 2023, how are we going to know that we did anything useful for a year? Well, we'll set measurable, and that's the thing about measurable goals, right? So it could be like, you know, oh, so here's an example, like there are 5 educational workshops that happen with XYZ kinds of populations with the, you know, like we're going to create some stuff that's measurable so that at the end we can be like, yep, we did the things we said we wanted, or we had the behavior change that we wanted to see, or there's going to be things that are measurable. So it's not just like, yeah, we're going to provide some information to some people. We're going to create a flyer. We're going to create a video. We're going to create a whatever this group decides they want to do. And at the end of the year, we'll be like, yep, we did the thing. Does that help, Joe? And then the other piece, there's like a process piece, right? So like in the development of those things, who did we engage? How did we engage them? So it's not just, you know, 3 committee members and 2 staff members that get into a room and make this thing up, right? That's not accessible. There's no equity in that. So I think we'll also be starting to document how to do that work. And that's where we really get to build equity in. Does that help explain a little bit, Joe, about our next meeting? And what the heck we're doing?
Yes.
Great. And so, because I know this can feel really, really big and vague. So what's going to happen is Jamie and I are going to just put some bones down. And then at the meeting in November, you're going to look at our bones and be like, I don't like that bone. I want to switch it around. Or like, here's some flesh for that. I like that. We at least have a place to start. And then by December, it's going to be done. And we're going to present that or start using that come January.
And please, if you find yourself having a conflict with the meeting time, feel free to connect with us via email. We recognize that people have very, very busy schedules.
Yes.
So we don't want your voice to not be heard just because you can't show up to the Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So keep asking and answering why all the way through our process. Yes. Including who's here, who's not here, and why. Who are we reaching? Who are we not reaching, and why? Yep. So we're getting close to the end. What I wanted to do was just take a minute, and this is something I'm trying to do. This is selfish. As the communications and sort of outreach person, there's a lot of folks that want to get involved in council stuff. And I'm trying to make sure we have very clear descriptions of each of our committees. So I can say, hey, this is what this committee is working on. Like, here's a sentence about what this committee is about. I've made up something for this committee so far, but want to just take a temp check on how folks would want to describe this committee. And let me, oh, what happened to it? Hold on. Where is my, okay, well, we're just going to do it this way. So this is a description of some of the other committees. And what this is my draft is work towards the goal of increasing equity throughout the homeless system of care. Other committees have descriptions. So HMIS policy, that's their description. Oversight, their description. Path innovations, that's their description. Work towards the goal of reducing unsheltered homelessness in Contra Costa by 75% by 2024. I'm actually curious, Jamie, I don't know if you have thoughts about whether the Path Innovations Committee description will change for next year, given that they have a little clearer sense of what they're working on. I
don't know yet.
Okay.
I think that the Path Committee will probably be able to tell me better.
Right.
But that is their North Star for sure.
Right. So this is like a draft. And I'll just put it in the chat. So I don't know if folks have thoughts about how especially Joe and Kiva, like what captures the work that this committee is going to be doing? What is the point? What are we trying to accomplish? Like, we have our specific goal, but more broadly. And we don't have to decide today, but as we're starting to market this group, it would be helpful. So what I have is like work towards the goal of increasing equity. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. Would it be goals or is it just a goal? That would be my only question.
Yeah, good question. I mean, the overarching goal, I think the overarching goal is to increase equity. And we're going to have sub goals about how we're going to do that. That's how I see it, but that might not be how you guys see it.
Yeah, the overarching goal is to never have to have this committee meeting again.
Right? I love that.
Make
this committee obsolete.
Yeah.
Part of why I made it broad to like increase equity throughout the homeless system of care is to make sure that we've talked about this as we've been doing this work, is like equity is not like a separate silo that you put in the corner. To me, like the point of this committee is to like be the drumbeat about like making sure equity is being talked about, thought about, discussed in like all the corners of our kingdom, right? So that's kind of why I worded it. It's like throughout, increasing equity throughout the homeless system of care. It's not just within the Council of Homelessness. It's not just directly in services. It's across.
So I like that. I would like to say of continuing continued attention to. And some, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but we want to make sure that we keep it as a visible, keep equity as a visible goal, a visible overall and overarching goal. So
here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull up a Word document and just throw some stuff on here.
And I get the word increasing, I get it, but I think that in our statement, we can be increasing does imply that this is a moving vehicle, does imply that this is an organic process.
Mm-hmm.
It is a living process, but ultimately our goal is not to ultimately increase it, but our goal is to reach equity.
And in some circles that this information is going to reach, it's actually going to be the first time that they've ever even thought about equity. And so it's even like in some circles, it's introducing this entire concept. And how do you explain that in a word, in a statement? The multitude of layers. I'm thinking growth came to mind. The word growth came to mind, expansion, the word like, I don't know, but something like that kind of came to mind.
Well, I agree, Joe, in that's one of the reasons why I'm saying it should be, we should have something about it being visible, something about it being very present. We got to make sure that it is a priority and it's visible. It's not just, this is not just a goal and we're going to go away. No, we're here. Hello, we're here all the time. And that's why my brain is has turned off. By the way, everybody, I went to Washington, D.C. and sat in the room with the President of the United States last week.
Woo-hoo. How can you possibly think after that?
On top of the fact that I went to Sacramento. So I'm a little fuzzy, but
it's all good. We don't have to fix it all right now. Just wanted to toss it in.
And also
Alex,
in the
I
chat
see your
too.
hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the chat, I just like the define. The word define was in there. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Does somebody have their hand up? Sorry.
Yeah, Alex and Betty.
Oh, go ahead. You control that.
Yes, I guess my observation, is equity is talked about so much, it's become sort of meaningless. That if you ask 20 different people, you get 20 different responses. And so and I don't know how many, if there's a word count we have, but for me, it really is about the equitable outcomes, right? I don't know if we just say it plainly, where no matter your background, you have the same, access and outcomes, right? Especially now, and definitely as a white person, you know, after George Floyd has been murdered, a lot of people talk about equity, but they're not, you know, like how I treat you is one thing, but do you have the same opportunities to get the same positive results? And so for me, I would want, you know, equitable housing outcomes, no matter, you know, your background. And I don't think, you know, like you said earlier, Jamie, I don't think it should be limited to race and gender, because, you know, people with mental health issues, people who, you know, fall different places on the spectrum of gender and sexuality. So I would love us to be specific about what that means, to actually define it for ourselves in the statement.
Thank you for sharing that, Alex. So I was going to talk about that as well. I was going to talk about outcomes. You know, it's something that some of the programs that I'm over are doing is, you know, this program models dashboard where we're looking at, you know, we have specific measures, and essentially we're being held accountable to reach those measures in order to be serving everybody, just like you said, Alex, and just like we've all been talking about. Everybody is being served at basically an equal amount, you know what I mean? So basically in terms of outcomes, I think we could add to this as we're taking our notes, like holding programs or agencies accountable for making these measures. I think that's an important part. And disproportionate is the word I was looking for that I couldn't think of, but yeah.
And this actually raises an interesting question of like, what is the lane of this committee versus some of the other committees versus like our monitoring program? And Jamie, I don't know if you have thoughts about this.
I think that all of these, I like the reference to the program models, and I'm digging for the link to that so y'all can know what we're talking about, because sometimes we talk in code. But I really like that you mentioned that, Betty, because that's the whole goal behind our program models and behind creating work plans, is that transparency and accountability. I think there's perceptions that, you know, people in whatever role or industry or government or not do a lot of just meetings for fun, and our goal is to really break that and say, no, we're working towards these big, ambitious, hard goals. If it were easy, we would have done it already. So
it's so important to help change the culture and to help change our language and the way that we look at equity and, you know, accepting everybody and combating inequity and injustices. It's important to talk about it. It helps shift the culture. But then, you know, just like you said, Jamie, these specific concrete things are the other side of that.
So this is, yeah, another thing that we can try and refine a little bit and bring back to y'all for more reactions at the next meeting. One of the primary uses of this description, which is short because, you know, we've got, I think, a single page back and forth to talk about our committees and our outreach materials. But one of the primary reasons is that we want people to know what they're signing up for when they join the committee, especially when we have a new council being seated in January. And so this is a way to really be clear about what's being discussed here, what's being asked of people who join. So people are coming in with open eyes and ready to do the work.
Great. I think our work here is mostly done until November. I'm gonna email everybody I'm gonna set up a Zoom link for the next 2 meetings. We will get them on our calendars. Jamie and I will work behind the scenes to draft a work plan to come back to this group, at least some starting points. If you have thoughts and questions in between, feel free to reach out. But I think this is a good place to stop. Any feedback you want us to have before we go on our merry way to our next whatever we
I again am so excited to see where we are finally. From starting, how many ages ago was that?
I don't know.
I can't, it seems like a lifetime ago.
Yep.
But I guess in some circles it was a lifetime ago. But I just want to say that I'm super excited that we're here and that we're continuing to do it. Like this is being done. We're doing it.
Yep.
Making the sausage. It's great.
Yes,
Just
exactly.
glad to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, so 2020, our trainings, our C4 innovations trainings were in 2020. That's what it does feel like. It's been a couple years because it has been.
Well, but
years.
even before that, right? Wasn't
Mhm.
there something with Bar High and there was like the
Yep.
Bali thing?
The real,
and, like,
yep.
all everything that, yeah, the real cohort,
Yes.
all of that.
This
Oh,
committee has been a
geez.
very long time coming. And here we are. Now we're gonna have like a legit grown-up work plan. I'm very excited.
Yay for adulting.
Yay! We all get gold stars today. Awesome. Okay.
One more
Yes,
thing just to share, and
please
again,
tell
I
me.
know I'm really hammering this sort of outcome thing, but I wanted to share one thing I saw the other day. You know, I saw something about the difference between mortality rates and our sort of age expectancy, like at what time, what age people die.
Yeah.
The difference between whites and blacks, and they gave the age, but then they did the math and they said, if that were equitable, there would be 8 million more African Americans alive today. That stopped me in my tracks. And I would love us to try to get our data in a way that says, hey, if we had equitable outcomes, this many more of this kind of person would be housed. Because I would love to put it in tangible numbers, like what are we really talking about and what is the real impact to our different communities?
Thank you, Alex. That is really powerful. Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges for this committee is going to be, again, sort of going back to like figuring out our lane. So we have like some committees that are really focused on metrics and numbers, and this committee uses those. But to your point, I think this committee, the point of this committee is to figure out how to use that kind of data to inform, create change, like change behavior, raise awareness. And this goes back to like the description of the committee. What's the purpose of the committee? So this is all, it's like you say, we're making the sausage. Yes, Joe's laugh crying. Other thoughts before we log off? Okay, thank you, everybody. Excellent
Thank you.
meeting. We'll be in touch soon. Bye.
See y'all
Bye,
later.
everyone.